Hey, I want to show you some things that I have been learning about and thinking about how we can apply what we're learning in ratiocination. This is one of my favorite books that I like to read with kids. It's called The Tin Forest, and I have a copy of the book right here with me. Here it is. But right now, there are all kinds of books that are online that are available for classroom use. And it's something that can provide us some additional practice and things that we might not think about. When you are in YouTube, a lot of times it will make closed captions. And when it makes closed captions, it also makes a transcript. So you can see right down here at the bottom of the video, I have clicked on the sideways snowman right here next to save, and it opened up the transcript. And it gives us exactly how the person spoke it. And if they're really good with diction, usually the transcript will come up with the right words in it. Sometimes because we all have different ways of speaking, it doesn't pick up on the words as we would hope, but we can toggle these timestamps and now we can copy the transcript of what the text is. Now, since this one isn't like a published example of what a transcript would be, it does not have punctuation in it, which provides a wonderful opportunity for us to work with editing practice for our students. Because now what we can do here is we can look inside of here and show that this text must be put into different lines and it must have capital letters and the commas. We can teach all kinds of skills with this and then have students compare it to the regular one. Now, what I'd like to do for this one right here is show you what happens whenever we ratiocinate for be verbs. I've contrasted it here and copied it into a different color, and I've added a focus phrase here for how we talk to kids about what we're doing and why. I was talking with my mom about this, and she said that whenever she was going to school, she was just told not to have any be verbs at all. Yes, that is true. Some of us are told that. But honestly, sometimes you need a be verb. I think of the book in the Bible, I am. It's extremely powerful and it's absolutely needed. The same thing is true when people are writing. We may need to go ahead and use passive voice purposefully because it fits what we are saying. And this book is a very good example of it. Writers begin sentences with different words and grammatical structures. That's something we can teach from this. And these help the reader visualize and follow the setting and plot structure. In addition, writers use different sentence lengths to help their readers persist and create flow between sentences. Sometimes, like in the house lived an old man, and every night the old man dreamed. Writers use short sentences for emphasis to help the reader focus on an important idea. But we can also have down here as a focus phrase, writers use be verbs purpose to communicate passive voice to indicate when people have no control over their circumstances. When possible, use active verbs to help create a more vivid image for the reader. It's really important for us to think about why would those be verbs still be there. So let's look at this sentence right here, these sentences. And so I'm going to go ahead and I've got them divided by sentence. I've also have them highlighted right here with the way the sentences begin so that students can start to see and apply some of the ratiocination we've done before about the way authors change not only the words that they begin their sentences with, but the phrases that they begin them with, as well as the types of sentences that they're using. If it's a simple sentence or a compound sentence or a complex sentence or a fragment even. Now, what we want to do is look for the use of be verbs for purpose. So I've got the same things right here, and I want you to notice something as I read from this text. You can also see that the writer does this with color, shape, and line. The Tin Forest. It opens to this bleak, windswept area, and all the trash is kind of laying around. It's rainy. There once was a wide, windswept place, near nowhere and close to forgotten, that was filled with all the things that no one wanted. Right in the middle was a small house with small windows that looked out on other people's garbage and bad weather. We can see that in this instance, the writer is talking about a setting in which the person doesn't have a lot of control. That's just where they live, and that's the circumstances around which they live. But look what happens next. In this image, we begin to see color. We see that in two places, with the man in his reading, and then back here where the fire is. In the house lived an old man. And so now we have lived, which is an active verb, and we can see that his mind is active and that his body is also active. Every day he tried to clear away the garbage, sifting and sorting, burning and burying. These are all very active images of the kinds of things he does to control and change his environment. And every night the old man dreamed. He dreamed that he lived in a forest full of wild animals. There were colorful birds, tropical trees, exotic flowers, toucans and tree frogs, and tigers. And so we can see him dreaming and the toucan over here in the picture. But yet we see that we've got all these active verbs here, but again, in the dream, we have a passive verb, one of the be verbs. So it's still a dream. But when he awoke, and you can see here, but when he awoke, the world outside was still the same. So we have another be verb. Now, here's a shift to active. We see the color in his face, and the light here is still that dim, broken area. But then in the next page, we can see where he's began to repair and replace, and now color is a part of the rubbish. He's transformed it. One day, something caught the old man's idea. One day, something caught the old man's eye, and an idea planted itself in his head, in his mind. The idea grew roots. It grew leaves. It grew branches. It was feeding on the rubbish. It grew bigger and bigger, and we see the repetition of the active verbs here. So it's growing and growing and growing. So it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And what you'll notice here is that the sentences get longer and longer too. Under the old man's hand, a forest emerged, a forest made of rubbish, a forest made of tin. And you can see I haven't corrected the sentences here, but you can see how it's growing branches with his hard work. It was not the forest of his dreams, but it was a forest just the same. And now we have the be verbs again. It was not the forest of his dreams, but it was a forest just the same. So I think it's really cool to talk to kids about why we use passive and active voice and making sure that we're doing on purpose as a rhetorical or strategic use of the verbs to help mimic what's happening to the characters and how they're feeling about their situation. And when we need to use them to help give an image of what is happening in the story or the actions that the characters are taking. Usually, what we have students do when they ratiocinate is they re-enter their work and they highlight the be verbs. And then we tell them usually, number one, decide, are you doing that on purpose because you want to suggest passivity? Or is there a way you could replace that with a more active verb that would give your reader a bigger picture, better picture of what it is to help that idea grow in their mind and sprout just like that tin forest in the book we just read? Many times I will have my kids count how many they have, and then I'll ask them to reduce it by half. That's another strategy that works well too. Well, I'll be interested to see what happens with your writing. Are you using be verbs on purpose? And do they serve a purpose? Or are you using them to shift from active to passive and passive to active, depending on what it is that you're meaning to convey? And I'm just wondering what's going to sprout or feed on your ideas about be verbs and vivid verbs.